let's welcome Avi Vieira to the show, who, for the record, did dare me to do this. So now I am doing it because it's the return of the pod. Avi, thank you for being on the show. Happy 4th.
Happy Fourth to you. Hey, where's your red, white, and blue, Tim? I thought
I
you'd get a
know,
little more
right?
patriotic with it.
I was really torn about that. I should do it, and then I ended up just going with the team color. So here we are.
Uh,
But you did. You look
I
incredibly
did.
patriotic and
Well,
awesome.
I had to work for my citizenship. I had to
Right.
pay for it, had to take a really hard test most Americans couldn't pass. Like,
True.
it's a really big deal to me. So,
And we are better off because you are here. So
thanks,
thank you.
sir.
I say this on behalf of watch fans everywhere, and also on a personal level. Very cool. And I wasn't kidding about the pod. For those
Hmm.
of you who don't know, and I'm going to actually turn this over to Abby because you guys all want to hear from her anyway. Tonight we are celebrating the. I almost said the return. It's the world premiere, the official premiere of Generation 4 XO, which means 51 millimeter. And Abby, let's talk a little bit about your background with exoskeleton over the years.
Well, strangely enough, I started with you selling these fabulous timepieces, and I have since been able to be the representative for the brand, which actually entailed seeing the factories where these timepieces are actually crafted, being a part of the initial design process, which is just fascinating in and of itself. And I'm just ecstatic, as I know you are, Tim, that we can continue this tremendous brand because from its onset, Exoskeleton has just been unlike any other. And, now people that have been collectors, the original members, they can continue to add to their collection.
That's very well said because one of the ways when people ask me about me being a fan of XO, which clearly I am, I think that the fan base of Exoskeleton is probably the most rabid. They have the most fervor of any single fan base. I'm not saying they're the largest,
Right,
but
right.
they once they're in, they are in. And if you're in that base, then you already know how important Generation 1 and Generation 2 were. And again, I'm going to get your thoughts on this, Abby, but to me, once you picked up those two in particular, the craftsmanship, the complexity of those builds, I mean, it was actually art that you wear.
Absolutely. And anybody that has ever owned an exoskeleton that has worn one out in public, the types of responses that you receive from people. 100% of the time, they're going to ask you what it is you're wearing, where they can get one. They're going to comment that they've never seen anything like it. And of course, this latest generation is no different. And Tim, what I really appreciate is that there's so much of the brand still in it, but it still gives you that fresh new look. It gives you that addition to your collection that's really going to set itself apart from your other exos.
Well, there's a lot certainly to talk about here, and we're going to spend a few minutes getting into it. Let me mention very quickly, let's talk price really fast, and then we're going to delve in because part of the fun of XO, and I think Abby will agree with me on this, there is so much to talk about in the watch that price is incidental. This isn't going to be something where you're going to hear us go over and over and over talk about price because frankly we don't have time. We've got a lot of other stuff. So I will say this. They list for about $2,000, or to be exact, $1,995. The world premiere price, which is exclusive to TAW, is $399 and shipping is included. Now we're going to do two colors for you. One of them we're simply calling blue because it is, and the other we are calling red. Now, I will tell you that red is a bit more than just red. Red actually also has the black case. It has sections that are layered in yellow gold. So if you really like the whole tricolor thing, red is where you want to be, whereas the blue is going to be a bit more of a two-tone. But I love the whole icy blue thing you guys got going on there with the white mother of pearl, and this is very cool. With that being stated, actually, Abby, if you're cool, let's open with the pod. I was completely serious. It's the return of the pod. All the
Yep.
purists have to have it.
Backed by popular demand. And for
Right.
those of you that have never felt this, it is ergonomically designed to just feel like a dream in your hand. Even the zipper itself has this slight curvature to it so that it does really well in terms of opening it. The zipper is really smooth. Of course, I have my personal exoskeleton here, which is the blue sapphire. But this pod, as Tim called it, is even designed to the point that it's streamlined. So you gentlemen that travel a lot, you want to take your watches with you. This will actually fit in a briefcase. So I mean, you think about that level of ingenuity where all of those things were thought of, and very few watch cases are sleek and designed to protect your timepiece. But even the insert inside the pod, there's actually a removable outer sleeve so that your timepiece, if it's sized, can fit into a smaller segment and be perfectly situated inside the pod. I'm getting all Twitter pated over pods here.
But it's great because I feel the same way because the first time I ever saw the pod, I was like, I've never seen packaging like that before. And Abby and I are very fortunate in the sense that we're friends with the original genius, and I love not misusing that term, that created XOSkeleton, and it's the same genius that created the pod. And so this really is ergonomically designed. This really is designed to protect the watch, even if it's sized, and it really is designed to fit in a business briefcase. It's stuff I would never have thought of, and it's brilliant. So one of the reasons I bring up the pod is for Generation 3. Which, to be clear, at that time, XOSkeleton was owned by a completely different entity than it was then or now. They did away with the pod, and in my opinion, they did away with a lot of other stuff that they shouldn't have.
I
And
agree
so
with
that's
you.
why I'm referencing, and I think you'll endorse me on this, is I referenced Generation 1 and 2 because the finishing on Gen 4 is rivaling what happened in Gen 1 and 2. It's back.
Absolutely. And when Tim talks about that finishing, you're going to notice that even the O-ring, which houses those suspended laboratory-grown gemstones, those gemstones are pristine. We're talking about top-of-the-line cutting. We're talking about top-of-the-line setting. We're talking about individually hand-set elements. When you look, Tim, at the laboratory-grown white topaz that make up the 2, 4, 8, and 10 o'clock markers, I mean, those have to be individually hand set. When you go to a factory and you witness this kind of craftsmanship, I mean, we're talking about people that have extraordinarily fine motor skills. Okay. And I mean, me, I don't know about you, sometimes I miss my mouth when I'm holding a coffee mug. Okay. So my
Sure.
motor skills are not developed enough for something like this, but it's fascinating to watch them hand set everything onto that dial. Even that X that you're going to see at the 12 o'clock, that has been custom designed for this brand. When you talk about having something that has been designed from the ground up, that's what you have here. And to me, Tim, it's reminiscent of a luxury car. You know, every luxury car brand sets itself apart by having that level of expertise, that level of craftsmanship and design. And XOSkeleton is that in a timepiece.
You know, that is, I think, a beautiful observation about this because and I know you've gotten this question over the years, and I certainly do, which is why do watches cost what they cost? And I don't think there's a simple answer for that. In fact, it's a rather complex answer. But when you talk about what XOSkeleton, I love your comparison to luxury cars because what are you paying for in a luxury car? And among the things you are paying for is utter originality, power. There's a sleek quality, and also the hand building, the hand craftsmanship.
Absolutely. Yep.
And it's something that not everybody else has. And that's what I think is so cool about XOSkeleton. You know, I referenced earlier their rabid fan base, of which clearly I am one. Is XOSkeleton, I think, set themselves apart from day one by never pleasing everyone.
Yes.
They set out to make art that you wear. And you know what? If you don't like it, that's fine. But for those who get it, quote unquote, there's nothing else like it. And you've probably seen this too, but if you look at like a Talk About Watches page on social media, specifically Facebook, every day now somebody is posting. They're going way back into the big heavy cuff from Gen 1, and it's cool. And you guys need to keep posting that stuff. And when you get this home in a few days, post it. Oh, since I'm holding it up, let me show you, and let's talk about this, Abby. 50, finally, the number one requested feature, because we had like the, I guess you could call it the prequel to Gen 4, which was the 40 or 42 millimeter. There
That's
it is. Now, I love those. But number one pushback, wish it was bigger.
Yep.
Totally get it. Here you go,
Well, and
51 millimeter.
it makes sense, Tim, because one of the things that XOSkeleton did, which you mentioned with Generation 1, it was so big. It was so outlandish. It was so over the top. And so, ooh, are you choking?
That'd be more.
So Generation 1 was this massive watch. And so it is that size that so many people love about the XOSkeleton. So while this smaller inception was great if you're a person that maybe isn't comfortable with large timepieces, or if you're a lady that like to wear it, this 51 millimeter, which PS, if you don't speak millimeter, it's approximately 2 inches wide. It wears like that big, bold, original XOSkeleton. One of the things you're really going to appreciate, and you're going to see this on the undergallery of the timepiece, is that it sits actually smaller on your wrist. So it's the O-ring itself that's going to be that 51 to 52 millimeter, but what's actually touching your wrist is a smaller footprint. So it's going to wear extraordinarily comfortably.
Yeah. And that's the advantage, by the way, for those of you who don't know, really quick, some Watch 101. Part of the genius in the building of exoskeleton is, as Abby just said, the O-ring is where you get the size, right? And it's also where you get the suspension of those gems, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But there's always a comfort factor that's in the smaller wristwatch. Well, how about a watch that figured out a way to combine the two? And that's exactly what happened here. So I've been showing you guys the blue. Oh, well, I take this. I'm in the process of taking this off. Let me show you something. I wear almost exactly an 8. I would say this easily fits up to a 9, and I'm actually wearing it loose. I mean, so it's probably 9 plus, but I'm just going to say 9 and be safe. And I'm going to go and put the red one on here. Abby, while I'm doing this, let's talk a bit about the patented O-ring and what that does for us.
The patented O-ring was really one of the things that put the superlative star on the map. And you're going to notice the exquisite texture around this O-ring. And what I love about it, Tim, and I know it's something you've appreciated over the years, is we're not talking about something that's just been stamped into metal. We're talking about several different components all coming together to craft this. So one of the features that you're going to see is that knurling, that kind of textured portion of the outermost portion of the O-ring. And then you're also going to see those beautiful brushed segments that actually make up those V shapes around the O-ring. And the gemstones are tension set. Now, one of the most fascinating things to me about Exoskeleton as a brand is when this brand was initially created, the innovator of this O-ring with the laboratory grown tension set gemstones, they were told it couldn't happen, that it didn't, there was no way that this could happen, but they had a vision. They finally found the right people to make this happen. And since then, Exoskeleton has continued this incredible tradition of suspending these laboratory grown gemstones, which I just think is exquisite.
And Abby makes and here's why I love having Abby on the show, because she has been involved with this brand from day one. And she's been to the factory, and as big a fan as I am, I've never had the chance to go to the factory to see exoskeleton being made, but Abby has had a chance to do this. The advantage of the O-ring, and there's numerous, but my favorite is, okay, so there's the suspension of the gemstones, but it's because they're suspended literally in space that you get additional light in. Now I'm going to turn you guys back over to Abby, because for those who may not know, Abby has a very serious background in loose gems and in set gems and so on. And what is the advantage of having a stone suspended like that for the end wearer?
You receive full dispersion. So imagine as the light is hitting atop of a gemstone, you're going to receive some of that refraction back. But what happens is as that light is able to move down and around and through, because of that suspended stone, you are going to get the ultimate brilliance, the ultimate dispersion, the ultimate color. And Tim, I know you've experienced this, but you can almost see that stone glow in some lights, when it's being lit from below and it just seems to come alive. It's absolutely stunning. So of course, blue and red are your options. The red stone is magnificent, but do not discount those laboratory grown blue topaz. And as Tim so aptly pointed out, it's that kind of icy blue quality. Are you wearing the red now, Tim?
I am, and let's check it out. These again are lab grown, and I want to have Abby get into that a bit, because in fact, prior to the show, she was correcting me, and rightly so. I've been saying lab created, but as she'll get into shortly, that implies that you just turn on the thing and there it is. But they're actually grown. It takes a process. But to hold up the red one, again, you see the very big, the 51 millimeter, the huge presence. They are topaz, but to look at them, and this to me is the beauty of the grown gemstones, they're perfect. This looks like perfect pigeon blood rubies. I am not saying they are. I'm telling you they're not. But I am saying they look like it. Now, if these were perfect pigeon blood rubies, you're talking a serious, heavy 5-figure price tag to get this just for the gems. But that's the advantage. It's the brilliance of how this stuff is put together, obviously.
And if you're not familiar with gemstones, one of the questions that I get asked all the time is this a real gemstone? And the answer is yes. And one of my favorite, comparisons in terms of a laboratory grown gemstone and a natural gemstone would be a rose that's grown in a hothouse versus a rose that's grown outside in your garden. So roses that are grown outside, they're going to have all of that exposure to the elements. They are going to not turn out perfect. They might be beautiful, but they won't be perfect. And it's the same for a gemstone that's grown in a laboratory. Just like a rose that's grown in a hothouse and it has this controlled environment, you end up with absolute perfection. As Tim mentioned, these gemstones are perfect. Now, if you have them gemologically tested, they will test as a genuine topaz because they are a real gemstone. They were simply grown in a laboratory instead of grown in nature. And as Tim pointed out, we're not talking about created. They don't just push a button and out pops a gemstone. You know, this isn't the Jetsons. We don't have those machines just yet. The reality is that they have to chemically grow these gemstones. So it's in an environment that's similar to nature in terms of the right mineral components, the right heat, the right pressure, and it takes a tremendous amount of time for it to happen as well. So we're talking about an intrinsic value, we're talking about perfect beauty, and we're talking about you owning a gemstone. So this is stunning, as Tim pointed out on the red. Oh my word. You're right about that pigeon blood ruby color, Tim, and you're going to have 8 of those gemstones surrounding that O-ring. And on the red, I love the contrast. So Tim, you mentioned at the beginning of the show that with the red, you're going to have a lot of elements. You have that black IP case, which you notice the difference of the texture between the knurled outer O-ring and that brushed portion. It really gives that depth to the black. But then you're going to notice those 4 points at the 12, 3, 6, and 9 that are done in that brushed gold. It is just beautiful. And to me, the warmth of the gold, the coolness of the black, the heat of the red, all of those elements just synergize so perfectly on your wrist. It's really got some sizzle.
You know, that's a great way to phrase it, because it does have the sizzle. If you look at, and to your point with the gemstones, and then you contrast it in this particular build with the black, and then you've got these intensely mirror polished V sections. They're finished in the yellow gold. I mean, it's amazing. Oh, and I wanted to come back and talk about the gemstones for a second too, because I love how you delve into the reality of growing gemstones, because it takes a lot of technology and a lot of time, and you don't just turn on the machine and they come out. And here's the other thing: I think there's a misconception where people think that if it's created, it's like an ice cube in a mold or something, and it's not. So after they grow them, they have to be cut just like a very fine diamond or ruby, or in this case, to me, this looks like the ice blue sapphire. And again, we're not saying they're sapphires. These are the created rubies, but the topaz. But
Topaz.
it's the flash and the scintillation, and they are absolutely amazing. These were cut in lapidary condition. I mean, this is
Yeah.
this is an extraordinary opportunity, and seriously, these are $2,000 watches. For those who missed the announcement earlier, they're brand new. We have the official world premiere of Generation 4, and they list for $1,995. And right now, world premiere, they are $399, and we have interest-free payments as well too. So check that out, as you are checking out over at talkaboutwatches.com. Your choice is simply the red or the blue. You know what we haven't really touched on, and we need to, is one. Very cool movement. So you've got the 515. So you've got multiple time zones, and also the mother of pearl you guys selected for this.
Absolutely. So Swiss made Ronda 515, and you do have that GMT, which is really fabulous. I love that addition here, especially because so many of you are travelers. And, you know, I was just in Vegas on a work trip, and even just that time change, it was throwing me off. So having that kind of secondary time indicator, really wonderful feature. And then as Tim mentioned, the mother of pearl. Oh my word. Okay, Tim, the way that mother of pearl plays on the blue, how you get those little flashes of blue, it is the finest grade mother of pearl. You are going to marvel at how remarkably beautiful it is, how all of these elements just play together so well. And it's the kind of thing where if you look at a list of the attributes that this watch has, you almost wonder like, okay, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, I mean, there's a lot happening. The way it works so beautifully on this timepiece, it just gives you all of these levels and layers. Even, we haven't touched on it, Tim, the innermost portion of the timepiece, the case itself. So you're going to see just above the dial on the inside ring, it's going to say exoskeleton all the way around. I mean, that kind of attention to detail where there's always some little nuance, something new to experience in your timepiece. Even the back of the watch itself, Tim, you're going to have all of the credentials on your timepiece. Of course, these are limited edition, so you're going to have your particular number on there, which nobody else owns. I mean, so much. And you know, one of the comments that I've heard so much, I don't know about you, Tim, but I've heard people talk about how the watches are worth the full price. You know, sometimes those MSRPs are just this hyper inflated, just kind of like, let's just pull it out of nowhere price. people are willing to pay full price for an exoskeleton because
And
of the quality you receive. It's worth it.
right, and this is the beauty of it. When you get this home, you'll understand why it lists for 1995. When you start to look at the actual perfect stones that are used, the crystal is a sapphire-coated mineral that's domed, that's treated to be anti-reflective. And I'm glad you got into the outer track because I was going to mention that the outer track is mirror polished, and then it's got this perfect micro writing. Those of you who go back with Avionite at generation 1 and 2, you know that's the big deal. And even there, it's perfect. It doesn't like say like XOSkeleton or something. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a perfect, exact, it sits right in. It is this art that you wear. And I'm very excited to have you guys get these home as you will in just a few days. Abby, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, but thank you. Any final thoughts from your side?
I don't think we mentioned the 316L stainless
Oh,
steel.
yes.
Maybe we did, but the entire ergonomically crafted cradle that's going to sit beautifully on your wrist, 316L stainless steel, which is one of the most expensive. I mean, we're talking about intercontinental bridges use this steel. So tremendous amount of quality in all of the material.
And these are, by the way, hypoallergenic. I don't think, but which is the point of 316L, so that's a good thing. And Abby mentioned limited edition, only 50 per color, ever to be made for the world. This is beautiful stuff.